There's a revolution underway that has the power to impact profoundly on almost every aspect of our lives, and our knowledge of it is accelerating. This scientific odyssey is happening at an almost invisible level, right back down at the building blocks of life, atoms. This is the landscape of nanotechnology, a landscape that, if mined correctly, may offer mankind the solutions to the many problems that afflict our society today.
So what motivates us, like what motivates most scientists, are curiosity and competitiveness. We're building together some ever-improved understanding of the world.
Investigators are now armed with new systems to exploit fresh opportunities from this emerging world. It's no exaggeration to say that technology and medicine are poised to change in ways many of us cannot even imagine.
I think nanoscience in general is really going to change people's lives. I think this is going to be one of the great achievements in science in the next decade. I really believe that we're at a crossroads. We can understand this, we can do wholly new things.
The way we live life today is really based on nanotechnology. We take nanotechnology for granted. Almost all of our high tech depends on it. Our mobile phones, our digital cameras, anything digital. It's electronics, and ultimately, the way the information is stored is magnetically.
Professor Mike Coey is one of Ireland's most celebrated scientific researchers. He's working at a scale so small that it's far beyond the reach of the human eye and even of a microscope.
So I can take you to the nano world in just 3 easy steps. Here we are in the real world. I call that the macro world, and the measure here is the meter. I'm about 2 meters. So the next step is to go to the milli world. We're going to focus down 1,000 times. So here in the milli world, the length scale is the millimeter. It's 1,000th of a meter. It's about the size of a flea or an ant. And I'm now a 2 millimeter man. But we're not stopping here. We're going down another step of 1,000 times. We're off to the micro world. So now we're here now in the micro world. This is what you would see through a microscope. You can see those living cells that are about 10 or 20 microns in size. I'm just 2 microns, so you have to look up to them. But we're not stopping, we're taking one last step, another focus in by a factor of 1,000, and we reach the nano world. So here we are at last. We've made it to the nano world in just 3 steps. This is the world of atoms and molecules. This is the world where physics, chemistry, and biology all blend into one, because we're dealing with matter on the smallest possible scale. You get about 4 atoms to the nanometer. So I would be a 2 nanometer man. So this is the nano world. Welcome to the new frontier.
There's an international race on at the forefront of computer technology, and the winner will be credited with literally revolutionising the industry. One of the front runners in the field is Professor Mike Coey in Trinity College, Dublin. Since the middle of the last century, our lives have become increasingly reliant on the computer. As a result, we are creating and storing huge volumes of digital information.
So the progress with magnetic recording has been one of the most spectacular success stories of modern technology, really, and it's one of the least appreciated. More than 50 years ago, IBM introduced their first hard disk drive. It was called Raymac. There were 50 platters, hard disks stacked up. It weighed a ton, it filled a good part of a room, and it cost about $1 million. The capacity of that machine was less than the capacity of an ordinary memory stick today. But the reason it's been possible to shrink things down to a modern hard disk drive from literally milliscale bits to nanoscale bits has been because of a fundamental property of the magnetic field, which is its scalability.
The scalability of magnetism allows you to reduce the physical size of magnetic material while keeping the magnetic field constant. It's this principle which has resulted in the magnet remaining at the very heart of the computer over the past 50 years.
If you open the hard disk drive, you see this shiny platter spinning at high speed, driven by a small permanent magnet motor. And then you see the arm jigging back and forth, reading the data off the tracks. That's also driven by a very powerful permanent magnet actuator. But most important is what's at the end of the arm. At the very tip of the arm, you've got a tiny, tiny electromagnet which writes information on the hard disk and an extraordinarily sensitive magnetic sensor which reads it. The information is recorded on the disk itself. So if you have, say, a 100 gig hard drive, that means that you can record up to 100 billion pieces of information in individually magnetized patches, tiny nanoscale patches on that hard disk.
The phenomenal explosion in the demand for computer storage has been driven almost exclusively by one technology, the World Wide Web.
About 10 years ago, the internet was text and low bandwidth images. It's completely different today. People think nothing these days of attaching a video and emailing it to a few hundred people. All of this has to be stored somewhere. This isn't something that we could do with old 10-year-old technology. We need huge amounts of new, fast, reliable storage. At the moment today, we're about 25% of the theoretical maximum storage capacity of hard disks. We see a need for data doubles maybe about every 8 to 12 months at the moment. So we would be out of space in 5 years. It's very obvious that if these developments stop today, it's absolutely unthinkable that we could keep pace with the requirements and the demand for growth and new storage and new data that people want to store. Within about 20 or 30 years, we'd probably be covering the entire land area of Ireland in data centres just to store the world's information, and that's not sustainable.
In order to be able to keep pace with this miniaturization, you have to invent new magnetic structures. These are stacks made of very thin films, maybe 1 or 2 nanometers thick, which have got the necessary properties to do this, and we're working on developing these in the lab.
Well, Mike Coey is currently involved in sort of a groundbreaking activity where he's looking for potential ways to make next generation devices. Basically, these R&D efforts are in fact a horse race. You start off with many possibilities. At the moment, it's been whittled down to 2 or 3, and Mike is amongst one of those last possibilities.
Coey is creating wholly new magnetic material from metals that originally haven't displayed any magnetic properties. He does this by laying down thin films of non-magnetic material, which, when sandwiched together, then produce magnetism. He believes that this will result in a new kind of magnetic material that will allow the production of even smaller readers, writers, and computer memory.
Almost every week, we make a different stack. So we change the configuration, we change the materials, we change the composition of the alloys, we change the order, we change the thickness, and we're doing this all in a search to generate some new functionality, to get one of these thin film magnetic stacks that will do something that they didn't do before.
As the race for the next breakthrough in computer technology reaches its conclusion, the scientific and commercial communities are watching closely to see who will reach the finishing line first.
I think in a matter of the next 18 to 24 months we'll know what the result of that is. But it'd be very exciting if in fact the type of device that Mike is looking at should in fact be the successful winner. It'll be a huge win for Ireland.
If Professor Coey and his researchers can push the boundaries of storage capacity even further, it'll open a new world of new technologies, new innovations, new products that people haven't even dreamed of yet.
What will the world be like from this point of view in 20 years' time? What will nanotechnology look like? Well, these things that you hold in your hand, your mobile phone, your computer, your digital camera, all of these things will become a lot less clunky. They'll be built into your clothes or into your glasses. Your home, which will be made of nanomaterials, will be full of sensors so as to pick up and respond to the environment. There'll be intelligent nanotechnology everywhere.
Advances in nanotechnology allow investigators to go down to the very building blocks of matter. It's now possible to modify atoms, giving them additional functions which could have a vast range of beneficial applications. Suresh Pillai from the CREST team of DIT has found a way of destroying a devastating disease by creating nanoparticles which can be incorporated into everyday products.
It is not possible to control an outbreak of MRSA by personal hygiene. Bacteria can contaminate everywhere. We have developed a new way of controlling an outbreak of MRSA by treating materials using a new methodology called photocatalysis.
2 years ago, Lisa Murdiff contracted the bacterium methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, otherwise known as MRSA. It's resistant to many antibiotics such as penicillin, and patients with weakened immune systems are most at risk.
I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease 5 years ago, and I ended up in hospital for 2 months. And because my father had died from MRSA, obviously my family were afraid that I was going to catch it, and I did, but thankfully it wasn't as bad as like my father, you know. I'm still sitting here. He's dead about 4 years now. So it would have been 5 years ago. He got it when he was in hospital. He had a sore toe. It got infected, so they had to amputate it, and it got into his bloodstream. Well, it's hard because you think just everyday little things, it's all just ifs. If he hadn't caught it, he'd still probably would have been here today. It's always hard enough going into hospital when you have an illness, trying to think, God, how am I going to get over this? Or is this the time that it's actually going to kill me? And then you're still thinking in the back of your mind, oh, what if I get over that and then I get MRSA, or, you know, I might walk out of the hospital again, you know. They might be so lucky the next time,
Pillai is looking at targeting MRSA by using photocatalysis. In photocatalysis, titanium dioxide molecules are switched on when exposed to UV light. These particles react to water molecules in the atmosphere, becoming active. They then set about devouring the bacteria or MRSA cells. But UV light is of little practical use in hospitals. What Pillai is aiming to do is to produce new nano-sized titanium dioxide materials. These nanoparticles are more sensitive, which means that they can do exactly the same job of killing MRSA, but instead using the light from a common light bulb.
The major challenge in this project was to reduce the band gap in titanium dioxide. So we had to provide additional materials to reduce this band gap, to make it feasible in the visible light region.
Pillai and his team use a process known as sol-gel technology to produce the titanium dioxide with increased sensitivity to visible light. It begins with the agitation phase, where various additives are incorporated into a solution which, when mixed together, then reacts with the water.
After the agitation reaction, the particles will be dispersed in a solution. It's called a sol. Over time, the sol gets thicker and thicker and forms a very viscous sol. And this viscous sol changes to a viscous gel. And this gel will be heated in a furnace at 400 to 500 degrees Celsius to produce nanopowder. The powders can be made in different size, shape, or surface area, so that this can be put in a paint and you can coat it and the room will be antibacterial. The solution can be sprayed on clothes and other surfaces to make it antibacterial.
Pillai's discovery garnered a lot of interest from industry, and he's collaborating with an Irish company to create an antibacterial paint product, which they believe will be available on the market by 2010.
So if you could imagine with this new photocatalytic material that would be contained within the paint, picture yourself coming into a room and flicking a light switch. And once the light is on in the room, the active ingredient within the paint is now ready to a stage where it can actually kill any bacteria and even mop up some of the toxic material that would be generated.
It's absolutely amazing that they can just paint a wall or spray your clothes and eradicate the MRSA. Even antibiotics, the strongest of antibiotics, can't even get rid of it. But yet all they're doing is painting a wall and bam, it's gone.
We are very pleased with the results, and it's a very straightforward technology, and this can have a wide range of applications, and the materials can be applied practically everywhere, in schools, hospitals, and in your home.
While Suresh and his team are attempting to destroy disease before it enters the body, another investigator is concentrating on what happens when the disease takes hold, and on how he can deliver nano-sized doses of medicines directly into individual diseased cells.
I think nanoscience in general is really going to change people's lives. It's the first chance that we've really had to go where we want to go. Anywhere in your body, inside a cell.
Professor Ken Dawson of UCD is leading a team of investigators in the emerging area of bio-nanotechnology, the marriage between biology and nanotechnology.
Bio-nanoscience applied to medicine really can open up a new paradigm. Until now, when you take a drug, the drug almost, if you like, dissolves in different parts of your body in a fairly uncontrolled way. It's not possible to stop it going to one organ or another. And so you have to limit the amount you take in, because some of it goes to the right place, a lot of it doesn't. But in fact, that's not how your body works. Your body can take a tiny amount of material and send nearly all of it to precisely the right place. So this is the paradigm that bio-nanoscience can really deliver to medicine. We can take tiny amounts of medicines and send them to precisely the right location.
Every organ and cell in the human body has a dedicated job, and they function in a highly ordered and structured way. In most diseases, a virus or rogue cell gets into an organ and then hides away. Here, it's at its most destructive as it continues to multiply and spread further disease, before moving away to infect or target other parts of the body. Dawson's research is aimed at harnessing the natural, unique characteristics of and pathways into the body's cells. With this information, he'll be able to send chemically intelligent nanoparticles to the diseased parts of the body, giving the particles instructions on how to get there. Once inside the cell, the nanoparticles, which are armed with medicine, seek out the damaged area and deliver the drug to their intended target.
Imagine the human cell as a huge city with many different postcodes. The cell also has sorting offices, just like the postal service. Now imagine if we don't address our nanoparticle correctly, it goes into the cell, it gets sent to the wrong place. Or, if we don't write any address on it, gets to the sorting office, complete confusion. My lab is in the business of learning how to write the correct address label with the correct sorting code, so when it goes into the cell, it goes to the right place, and in addition, we give it an instruction as to what it's going to do when it gets there. This really is the cutting edge of what bio-nanoscience can do for mankind.
In this lab, we are interested to make designer nanoparticles. So we design them to do certain things. So for example, we design them to be small enough to get into the cells. We design them to be small enough, for example, to cross the blood-brain barrier, or we design them to be small enough to reach specific locations within the cell.
And as scientists, it's important for us to know that the nanoparticles are going, in fact, where we sent them to. But they're so small, it's impossible for us to see them with the naked eye. So one thing we can do is label them with fluorescence. Now, of course, we still can't see an individual nanoparticle, so the way you should think about this is as a lighthouse. We can't see the lighthouse, but we can see the light coming from it. And that's what tells us that the nanoparticles are in a particular location in the cell.
Here we are looking at 30 nanometer gold nanoparticles in a solution, so we're looking at the particles moving in the solution. This is important because we need to characterize the size of the nanoparticles, and we need to see that the nanoparticles are individual nanoparticles rather than large clumps of nanoparticles, because this is important so that they're small enough to go into the cells. So anything less than 100 nanometers can potentially get into a cell, and anything less than about 30 nanometers can reach the nucleus in a cell. Here we're analysing the sequence of images that we captured previously, and each of the red tracks here is actually a nanoparticle being followed. So each of those red squiggles is basically the path that a particle has taken. We can determine the size of the particle from how quickly it moves, so smaller things move faster than larger things.
While Iseult Lynch is concerned with creating the optimum nanoparticles, her colleague Anna Salvati takes the particles and introduces them into the cell.
So here in this kind of plates you are growing the cells. So on the bottom of this plate there are the cells alive, and on top of it you put this pink medium is the food. It contains all the cell needs to keep alive. What we do is that we add the nanoparticles in this food of the cells, and then we go to study if the nanoparticles enter and where they go inside the cell. Now these cells have been grown in the presence of nanoparticles, and here this green is the nanoparticles that are specially colored. As you can see, inside the cells there is a lot of this green, so nanoparticles manage to enter the cells, and that's kind of a shocking surprise because the cells normally defend itself from external agents, and there are specific routes. If something that is unwanted enters the cells, is immediately sent out. The cells is here, it seems to be healthy, continues to grow, continues to divide, even if it's filled with these nanoparticles. First of all, the first surprise is that they end up inside the cells. Then, depending on the nanoparticles that you use, they end up in different locations, in different structures. So we are trying to understand where is the connection, why some particles accumulate in a structure and other materials goes in another structure.
So we've begun to master the cell. We know how to get in there and we know how to drive around it a bit. But what do we really want to do? Let me give you an example. Think of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's in the brain. Traditionally, extremely difficult to get useful therapies across the blood-brain barrier. But now we know that less than 35 nanometers, nanoparticles can, if they're addressed properly, get into the brain. What we have to learn is how to get enough in and how to give them the right instructions for what they should do when they get there. That means we can really begin to address some of the historically intractable diseases. One of the reasons that Ireland has really taken a leading role in this field is that we entered the field at the very beginning. I've rarely been as excited in science as this period. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for these different threads of science, physical and biological sciences, medical sciences, to come together to do something that really will change people's lives. So nanotechnology is going to really revolutionize society.